All right, well, welcome to the Unit 1 hearing. My name is Ryan Susky. I'm Director of Programs at the Ohio Center for Law-Related Education. We're the group that runs the We the People program over in the Buckeye State. We're going to follow the usual procedures today of a 4-minute opening statement, followed by 6 minutes of judges' feedback. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand things over to your chairperson to begin today's hearing.
Good afternoon, Rhode Island. My name is Christopher Riano. I'm a professor of constitutional law and government at Columbia University and assistant counsel to the governor for the state of New York.
Hello, I'm so happy to be with you. My name is Mariam Memar-Sadeghi. I participated in We the People program the first year it was offered on the bicentennial of the US Constitution, long time ago. I'm originally from Iran, and over the last 10 years or so, I've led some efforts to adapt and translate the center's curriculum for people living in Iran, teachers and regular people. We use tools like Zoom and social media. I wish you the best today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Darcy Kern. I am a professor of history at Southern Connecticut State, just west of you. I am also an alumna of the program. I did this many years ago and really enjoyed it. And I have to say, the purple is a good look. Great minds you're gonna like here, so.
And if you can take a second to introduce yourselves and your teacher.
My name is Maddie Archambault. Miss O'Brien teaches We the People at North Smithfield High School.
Good morning. My name is Andrew Dinh, and I'm a student at North Smithfield being taught by the wonderful Miss O'Brien.
My name is Kyra Meksavanh, and I also am a freshman at North Smithfield High School.
Good morning. My name is Brandon Wholey, and I am also a freshman at North Smithfield High School enrolled in the We the People program.
Wonderful. Well, thank you to all of you and to your teacher. So we're here obviously for unit number 1. It's going to be question number 3. Aristotle asserts in Politics that it is not the form of government, ruled by the one, the few, or the many, that matters most, but rather the ends of government that are most important. Where in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution did the framers set forth the ends of government? How did the framers differ, if at all, about how the ends of government should be prioritized, and which of the ends of government set forth in the Declaration and Constitution appear to have the highest priority today? You may begin.
Aristotle, the Greek philosopher, left behind a legacy of extensive political knowledge. What separates him from his mentor, Plato, was his study of real-world politics. Plato held a belief that everything had an ideal form, while Aristotle observed that the world around him and drew his conclusions based on his observations. The men behind the Declaration of Independence and American Constitutions studied the work of Aristotle because although they were separated by thousands of years, Aristotle and the framers were faced with many of the same political questions. In his work Politica, Aristotle asserted that the form of government was less important than the ends of the government. The answer that the framers were looking for can be found in the 2 most important documents of the American government, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution.
The Declaration of Independence broadly contains what the purpose of the American government should be. It allowed for the later documents to more specifically define the ends of our government. The Declaration can be separated into various parts: a preamble declaring the goals of government, a list of grievances against the King of England, and a formal pledge to fight for independence. Detailed in the second section of the document is an overview of natural rights philosophy and Britain's failure to protect those rights. This is where the first and primary goal of our government can be found. It states the governments are instituted to secure the unalienable right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This broad statement should be expanded 11 years later by the preamble of the Constitution, which establishes 4 clear ends of the government. Those are: establish justice, maintain domestic order and security, protect from external threats, and provide for the general welfare of an American citizen. The framers established these goals based on the principles of natural rights, self-governance, and the separation of power between the 3 branches of government.
Due to their experiences with the British monarch, the framers prioritized some ends more than they did others. The greatest grievance that Britain committed against the colonies was denying them a voice in Parliament. For that reason, the framers wanted their new republic to emphasize popular sovereignty above all else. The framers wanted American citizens to have a say in how they should be governed because they did not enjoy that right due to virtual representation in Parliament. The framers wanted the elected representatives of that United States to directly represent the constituents that voted them in, whether that be trustee or delegate representation. This was accomplished by first allowing all men with property to vote. Then over time, voting rights were extended to more and more groups via amendments. The framers' second priority in terms of goals for the American government was to ensure that her citizens' natural rights were protected at all costs. This was also a reaction to the experiences with the British. The colonists were forced to endure unlawful searches of their property as a result of the British issuing general warrants. The desire to limit government and protect liberty is why the Anti-Federalists demanded a Bill of Rights and clear checks and balances.
There's no doubt in saying that the American government's priorities have shifted in the modern era. As America's role on the international stage has grown, so has our military. With the largest military and arsenal in the world, it seems that today's presidents have prioritized the defense of our nation above all else. In the words of the Constitution, provide for the common defense. However, not all of America's efforts have gone into the international front. Domestic efforts to help those who need it most are also very present. The reach of these programs was greatly expanded by FDR during the Great Depression, where vast quantities of Americans required them. Government-run programs such as Medicaid, Lifeline, and federal student aid, just to name a few, have the intended purpose of providing otherwise costly services to those who cannot afford them. It is estimated that the U.S. government spent just over $1 trillion on its 80-plus welfare programs in 2019 alone. This shows our government's commitment to promote the general welfare. Although our nation's priorities have shifted over time, we still seek to achieve the ideals of our founding documents.
Time?
Excellent. I like that intro, and I'm curious, in outlining a little bit more for us about how the social contract works, how do you think Aristotle's virtues have influenced the social contract and the foundations of good government? I mean, do you think in many ways that there's a juxtaposition? Do you think that it's critical to have within good government some of the most critical pieces of what virtue really means?
Greek philosophers were a big foundation of the American government, especially Aristotle, because he went beyond Plato's views and he expanded on his own.
Are there other pieces or other philosophers or other pieces of what you just said that you think fit into this concept of good government, or what is important within good government?
Even John Locke and Montesquieu, they really formed the Constitution and especially the Declaration of Independence as well.
Well, how would you define good government?
I would define it as the government not overstepping any boundaries set by the people who they govern.
I define good government as a government that protects the natural rights of the people and they listen to what the people have to say.
A good government for me is a government that values the people's opinions and views and can respectfully set boundaries and rules in place.
A good government for me would be a government that really listens to the people and does what the people want and doesn't change what they were voted into office for.
You guys mentioned on how our priorities have shifted to provide for the common defense and general welfare. You gave a lot of numbers about how much money the government is spending. Are there other ways that the government could provide for the common defense or promote the general welfare without just throwing money at programs?
With the coronavirus, if there was a vaccine to come out anytime soon, even without FDA approval, insurance wouldn't necessarily cover it. So even the president being like, hey, like a coronavirus shot to kind of fight that off, that could help.
And then through making peace with enemy nations, other than like spending on their military budget, they can still promote the common defense. because they are eliminating a threat and making an ally at the same time.
Let me ask you about how society is maybe too fractured, polarized, torn apart. Do you think that even before the corona crisis, we were suffering from not being unified enough? Or do you think that, this is always the case in any kind of democracy? People are going to have different opinions and they're not going to be unified. Or do you think that it's more than it's been before and we have a problem?
We easily have a problem with Donald Trump's impeachment. Both sides, the Democratic and Republican side, for the voting, they voted their own ways. The Republicans were like, we don't want him impeached, and the Democrats were like, we want him impeached. We haven't always been polarized, but it's definitely gotten a lot worse.
I actually disagree with my colleague Madison. We definitely are more polarized now than we were in the former years, but I actually think it's a good thing because that would make it so that only bills that both parties can approve of pass through Congress, which almost ensures better legislation because the ones that aren't going to get voted in.
I agree with Andy. I think being polarized is a benefit because you get to hear both sides of the parties, and it allows for more debate and civic discourse.
I agree with my colleague Maddie. You can definitely see how split we are with the two political parties and how the Democrats really wanted Donald Trump impeached and the Republicans were targeting the Democrats for basically having a voice and doing what they thought was good for the country.
The issue with two very liberal and conservative sides of America, there's no compromise ever. For president, there's no electoral college. The independents can't get elected at all. And so in this year's election, you have Donald Trump running and then Joe Biden, both very opposite sides of the spectrum. So we're going from a Republican president to a super Democratic president. And there's that big jump, and that's very dangerous for a government.
I find it kind of ironic how in America, like we're experiencing polarization like the worst, right? But most Americans, they don't go to either side immediately. They're in like the middle.
Very good. Very, very good. So I liked what you guys did today. That was great. You had a strong opening. I was able to follow all of the theory that you opened with and able to follow all the things you were saying when you opened, which is always good. And I thought that a lot of your answers, and I haven't seen a lot of this actually, and I like this, I thought a lot of your answers were actually quite practical. And I found that to be refreshing. There is something that's critical about this unit, and I think my fellow judges would agree. Unit 1 is the foundation of everything. If you begin to understand some of these theories, and you all do, you can then translate that to why did that happen today in politics? You can begin to say, well, why does this happen this way in one country and this way in another country? It's all foundational, and that's what Unit 1 gives you. And I think that you'll be able to take this with you for the rest of your life. But coming right back to what I said, I also like the fact that you tied in the practicality, because there's a practical nature to good government, a practical nature to the social contract. There's a practical nature to how things operate. I liked how you all participated. I thought you all did well working together. And I was very impressed. You should be very proud of the work you've done today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I agree with my colleague. I think you had a naturalness, a willingness to think on your feet and say what you really think about anything we asked you. That's a great thing. I think you appreciate how important Unit 1 is. And I hope that through the rest of your years in high school, you continue to apply the lessons from Unit 1 and continue to really engage with these philosophical concepts, because you're going to be on very, very sure footing moving through the rest of your life because of Unit 1. I know you already appreciate it, and I think with time, you're going to appreciate it even more.
Are you all freshmen?
Yes.
Yep.
All freshmen. I don't think I could have done what you guys just did when I was a freshman.
I just have to echo that. That makes that even more incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would like to echo what my colleagues said. The practical responses that you gave were really interesting. I mean, to my question, you talked about insurance companies and vaccines, and then you talked about making peace with other nations as a means of promoting the common defense. I thought that was really interesting. I hope that we see you again in the future as you are in high school in the future. And I think that as you get older, you should really jump into Aristotle's Politics and Plato's Republic. I thought that was interesting how you started with that. And they're very different texts, and I hope that you are able to jump into those in the future. And what my colleague asked you about with the virtue, see how virtue plays a role in both texts and in political government. But yeah, you guys did a great job. Really, really good.
All right, very nicely done, students. Thank you all for being here. You certainly deserve a round of applause for your work today.
And
I'll
your
go ahead and
thank you, Ms. O'Brien.